Okay, I've been asked about soldering up these boards and some of the problems with doing it. The first thing I want you to look at, now this is a little ignition control for a gas furnace, and I'm going to try to show you. You can see a real light line right here. That is everything on the left of that is has some kind of plastic coating on it. You need to get the coating off. That's the point of this. So if you're doing some soldering and you see that kind of shiny stuff on there, and then it has a coating on it. So you got to sand it off with sandpaper. Now here's a couple of soldering irons. These are just little electric irons. Now this one here is adjustable. Goes from, now you can probably do about 10 to 50 watts. They don't need to be very high in wattage. This point here is what gets hot. This one here, just the El Cheapo brand. I think it's 30 watt. Yeah, 30 watt. But the heart of these things is this silly thing right here.
And that's just a little copper bar that transfers the heat from the heating element in the iron.
Now here I've got it warmed up, and I'm going to put my solder on. Now this is a really thin solder. This is for real fine work. It is a rosin core solder, which means there's a rosin inside. That's what you need for this. Acid core is not what you need. Now, I'm trying to get this thing tinned, and I'm going to try to clean it off with a wet sponge. You can see it didn't really clean. It only cleaned one side, and that's fairly common. The other side of this isn't very clean, and if you leave this thing set, it'll overheat, and it'll get the whole thing will get dark, and it won't work very well. Okay, I've sanded this thing down a little bit and putting some solder on it, and trying to get this thing to tin. Pretty well tinned. Okay, now it's tinned. Now I'm going to shut it off and we'll cool it down so it doesn't overheat the tip. Okay, I've cut a spot here. Now there doesn't seem to be any coating on this board, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And I'm going to see if I can warm that trace up and cross it over. Now you can see I've melted the solder there. And we're going to try to move it across that trace, or the break in the trace. The trace itself does have to be pretty warm. Okay, try to get the trace warm, and when you get it warm enough, remember it's going to suck heat off of this iron very quickly, especially if it's a large trace. Okay, the joint's completed. I had to clean it off a little bit with a knife to get that to work. And then you let that rosin kind of work in on that copper trace. And you should be able to get them. Now, if some of the traces are really large, you may want to use a soldering gun because they have more power. Most of the stuff we work in this HVAC stuff is pretty small, so I wouldn't think we need too much really large stuff. But sometimes you will have some real heavy traces that a little 30-watt iron won't take care of.
And before you're done, notice you got a few little spots there that are almost bridging across to another trace. Make sure you take a knife or something and cut between there and make sure none of those pieces are actually touching anything.
Anyway, that's how to do it, rosin core solder. This is a solder I'm using. It's like 22 thousandths. It's really too small for this kind of stuff. It should be 35 or 45, something like that, but rosin core. Hope this helps. I'll be doing more on soldering as we go along.